Hello! I'm not expecting anyone to be watching just yet, because it's a couple of minutes early, but I'm like neurotic about these things, so I'm terrified that obviously if I don't join 2 minutes early, exactly 2 minutes early, in case anyone was checking the time, then like the whole world might implode, or my internet might stop working. Oh, hello, Rachel and Clem. So I should probably stop talking drivel now, and remember also that this is going to end up on my Twitter page. So talking gibberish probably isn't the best idea, maybe, but then most people who know me might know that I talk gibberish most of the time. Who knows? I'm gonna keep going with the gibberish for a couple of minutes, just to make sure that anyone who's still listening to Josie is able to catch the end of her broadcast. And then I'll get going at exactly 4 o'clock. That's my plan. Okay, so I'll tell you a bit about myself in the 1 minute that we've got left. I'm Judith Crow. I live up in the far north of Scotland, about as far north as you can get without leaving the mainland of Britain. So I'm in Wick, which is 16 miles south of John O'Groats. So really, really far north. I was born in Orkney. I grew up in Lincolnshire, so I've been here, there and everywhere. And I'm super excited to be sharing my book with you, my upcoming book. Okie dokie, right, we're nearly at 4 o'clock, so I'm just gonna go with it and see how it goes. So I'd like to start by thanking Josie. That was Josie Jaffrey, who we were just listening to a minute ago, who did a reading from The Gilded King and then spoke a little about her work. I was really super interested to hear about it. I loved how she was mixing up the undead, which sounds really weird, but with the vampires and zombies to create her world, and that question of a dystopian sort of existence. So really fantastic, Josie. Thank you so much for that. It's always difficult listening to the person who's going to come before you because you realise what a hard act you've got to follow, but I will do my best. So thank you very much to Josie for the last half hour of excellent listening. I'd also like to thank Rachel Churcher for setting this up. So I understand that because of the whole coronavirus thing, things aren't happening as they would be happening normally. But Rachel's made sure that lots and lots of independent authors have chance to showcase their work, and that is just fantastic. So thank you so much, Rachel. I'm sorry I missed your bit today. I did catch you on our own right though, so I'm hoping I didn't miss too much, but I can always go back and double check. That's the other thing, guys. If you miss a bit, of course, everything goes up on Twitter as well for a while, so not just of me but of anyone. So anyone you've missed, go back and check out their Twitter page and find out what they were saying in their little section. Right, so I am going to talk to you today about Dance With Me, but first of all I will just give you a little nudge in the direction of my first book, which was The Backwater. They're not linked at all, but I would just like to put this out there. This was a finalist in the Wishing Shelf Book Awards for 2019, so I just got my feedback the other day and I was very, very chuffed with it. So it's a ghost story and you are very welcome to check it out. Welcome and encouraged to check it out. But the book I'm going to be talking to you about today is actually out in October, on October the 22nd, which actually, as it would have it, is my granddad's birthday. It is called Dance With Me. Now, because it's not out till October, I actually haven't seen a paperback proof of it yet. So I've got the ebook proof, but not the paperback proof. So I'm just kind of holding up a picture of the front cover. So this is Dance With Me. It's a kind of young adult fantasy with, like I said, with this, I hope this bit that's gone up for Twitter, young adult fantasy with kind of romance and historical fiction kind of thrown in. And the general idea is that there's this girl called Kelly, who's 15 years old. She lives in a well-to-do suburban area, and she absolutely obsesses over folk music. But it's a bit of a secret, you know. It's not like she tells her friends and stuff, but it's mostly a secret. She doesn't really want the whole world to know. She's a bit embarrassed because, you know, folk music's not exactly cool. And after she breaks up with her boyfriend, she meets someone called Tam Lane, and Tam Lane takes her into this world. And as she's in this world, this is where the story starts, essentially. As she's in this world, she finds that it's a place where folk songs are coming to life. And she loves it. And then she starts to realise that actually folk songs, often they're not the happiest songs. There's some pretty miserable fates in folk songs. So she's surrounded by all of this heartbreak that keeps happening to her. Anyway, when she gets into the world, the first people she meets are this band of robbers. And she's kind of adopted by the head of this group of robbers, who's called Aelvic, and his wife Lizzie, and their little boy Edward. So they've just lost a child who's about her age, which is why Aelvic he takes an instant fondness to Kelly, because this Kelly reminds him of this daughter that he's lost. And so they adopt Kelly, and she becomes a part of their life. And it's just like a little village that's all robbers. And one of the characters in it is Davy, who's a real charmer. And she knows that Davy's quite popular with the ladies. But she doesn't know much more about him at this point. So she just knows he's never on his own. He's always got like 2 or 3 women around him, and he seems very, very popular. Anyway, so I'm going to just start reading and stop talking. In the quiet of the night, when the world plunged into the blackness she had never known until she had appeared in this strange place, Kelly would get homesick. One night, long after Edward was asleep, she tiptoed from the room and, slipping her feet into her trainers, out into the night. Apart from the faint glow coming from the pub, the streets were dark, and the stars provided most of the light, as it was a new moon. She sat down in the market square, against the pillar where the men would tie their horses, and thought about everything that had happened. She wondered what Marcus was doing, whether he was with another girl, or whether he had even noticed she hadn't gone back to school. Kelly still wasn't sure this was not a dream, or a nightmare, or whether it was really reality. There was no way she could ever explain this if she managed to get home, and deep down there was a part of her which didn't want to return. She thought about her parents, wondering if they had called the police about her absence, and whether her latest school photograph was flashing up on screens around the country as she sat here in the past, or in some other world that made no sense. As Kelly sat there, thinking about the things she was missing in the 21st century, she heard whispers a short way from her, and saw Aelvic and Davy with one of the other men who had been in the cave. It was Aelvic who was whispering, and silhouetted against the glow from the pub, Kelly could see the other 2 men nodding in agreement at whatever was being said. They mounted horses and rode away, passing almost within a foot of where Kelly was sitting, and determined to see where they were going, she leapt to her feet and ran after them, trying to be as quiet as possible. The night was beginning to fade, and the clouds were dispersing in navy blue and grey fingers which twisted through the sky. Kelly was not sure whether she had slept longer than she had realised in bed, or whether she had fallen asleep in the marketplace without noticing. Following the men out onto the hills, she saw them waiting behind the craggy rocks next to the road. In the early morning sunlight, the light was shining on the thin, long blade belonging to Aelvic. Suddenly he leapt to his feet, and with a cry which seemed inhuman, they ran into the road. Kelly looked harder and saw a beautiful coach being pulled by 6 white horses. She could only imagine the kind of people who would ride in such a vehicle, beautiful and wealthy. "Stop!" Aelric shouted, standing in the middle of the road with his knife pointing towards the coach. "Stop, coachman!" The coach drew to a complete stop, the horses screaming, and the three men set upon it like wolves attacking prey. While Davy and the other man, who Kelly recognised as the one called Peter, clambered into the coach, Aelric climbed up and pressed his knife against the driver's throat. There were cries from within the carriage, and suddenly Davy tumbled out of the door, taking with him a young woman a little older than Kelly. He pushed her onto the floor and leant against her, his knife by her head. Aelric had his eyes fixed on the driver, apparently oblivious to the woman's screams. Kelly, with no idea what possessed her to believe she could add anything to the situation, ran down the slope so fast she almost lost her footing. She could only think of the fear the girl would be feeling as she lay helpless on the ground. "Stop!" Kelly shouted, much as her guardian had done just seconds before. It was Aelric who looked up first, and for his trouble received a sharp blow from to the head from the butt of the driver's whip, knocking him from the carriage and onto the floor. Kelly was torn. She had only one opportunity to make the most of the shocked expression on Davy's face and rescue his victim, although she wished she could have gone to Aelric. She threw herself at Davy with such force that they both hurtled down the grassy verge on the other side of the road, allowing the young woman to scramble to her feet. She looked at Kelly for a second before jumping into the carriage, and a moment later Peter came out with his hands full of money and jewellery. He ran over to Aelric, who was still sprawled on the floor. Kelly did not have the opportunity to get up, as Davy struck her again and again as though he intended to kill her. She had never been so afraid for her life, even when she was 10 and had been sent over the bonnet of a moving car as she ran across the road in front of her grandmother's house. She had never seen anyone so determined to hurt, to damage, to kill. It was Peter who came to her rescue, hauling Davy off her as she lay on the ground, crying and bleeding. She heaved herself to her feet and threw herself over to Aelric. His eyes blinked open and looked into hers as she knelt over him. A look of concern crossed Aelric's face as he held out his hand, which Kelly took and kissed over and over again. She was sorry. She was more than sorry. She already felt tortured by her decision to become involved, although she would have been even more haunted if she had not stopped Davy. After a moment, Aelric's gaze drifted away and he lost consciousness again. It took both Peter and Davy to lift Aelric, who was far bigger than either of them, and Kelly rode on the horse behind him as he had done for her that night when she had run away into the darkness. It was not easy, and took every bit of horsemanship she had ever learnt to manoeuvre her way through the rocky terrain, with Aelric's full weight shifting in the saddle after every step. Kelly didn't know what conversation passed between the other men, but Davy said nothing at all to her, and when they reached the village, he helped Peter carry Aelric into his house. Lizzie kept her cool and guided them through to her room, where Aelric was placed gently onto the bed. "What's happened?" she asked, pulling Aelric's jacket from his limp body and putting it behind his head as an extra pillow. Her husband murmured incomprehensibly as she spoke, but Lizzie paid no attention, kissing his lips to silence him. "The driver was quicker than we expected," Peter replied. "He pushed him from the carriage. He's just hit his head." "Right," Lizzie said, and then turned to Kelly. "My lady, you're hurt. Let me help you." Kelly shook her head, unable to speak, and hurried from the room and out of the house. She had enough presence of mind to take Edward with her, but her head was swimming from pain and guilt, and she could barely think. So that's where I'm going to stop this little bit. So I started just into the chapter, and then there's a little bit in that chapter afterwards that kind of tells you how Aelric deals with Davy and what he's done. So the book is kind of all about Kelly learning about these relationships in her life. So she's come from a very disinterested family in the 21st century. They're not like a bad family or anything, but they're just not really interested in her. And she's just left this relationship with, again, not a bad person, but someone who's just not very romantic, maybe. And she's got these ideas of romance which often come from folk songs, which are not necessarily the most current and up-to-date ideas of romance that there are. So yeah, and she goes through and she develops all these different relationships. So the relationship she has with Aelric is kind of a father and daughter relationship, which has been missing in her life before. And then she starts a relationship with William, which is what she wished she could have had with Marcus. And then she meets Lord and Lady Arlen, who take her on as a ward. But the relationship between them is much more like they're a kind of her brother and sister rather than her parents. So she's developing these relationships all the time, and she's kind of realizing that she can be a strong person, but it's the relationships she has with different people that give her that strength. And she's always been a strong person, but because she's not had these relationships in her life to kind of underpin her, oops, I'm dropping everything, then she's never been able to really exercise this strength before. But then, you know, that's like the personality side of it. But then there's this kind of, the plot's kind of driven by this plot against Lord Arlen, and she finds out someone wants to kill him, and she has to figure out who it is, and then ultimately try and protect him, and it comes down to her to save the day, effectively. I will not tell you too much, because I do hope that when it comes out in October, you will want to read it. I'm going to kind of just keep talking now, but please do ask any questions, because otherwise what you'll get is just me talking like this. Yes, so... Oh, fabulous, Rachel. Yeah, I love folk music too. So I was brought up on all sorts of different folk music. I'm not like Kelly in that way. It's not something I discovered myself. It's something that I was totally brought up on, especially from my mum. She adores folk music. Okay, Josie says, who's my favourite author? So, well, this is a really tricky one because I come from a whole family of authors. So I'm so lucky because I get to be either an alpha reader or a beta reader for loads of great new books. And I love reading the books that are written by my family. I fit in a sort of young adult slot. And my mum does picture books and also nature writing, but for this, just think picture books for little children. My little sister does middle grade. My older sister does adult fiction. And so I fit into this sort of young adult thing. But leaving aside them and how I get these sneak peeks at all these great books, I know they're the best. I would say probably Neil Gaiman, in terms of people I don't know. Not a big fan of him as an individual, but as a author, I think he is just fantastic. And the journey that he takes his characters on is something that I really hope I can do too. And that I really try and do. And it's like that constant character development, which somehow the plot is just accepted, if that makes sense. And it just makes sense. But it's driven by this kind of character development that follows through his books. So The Graveyard Book, one of my absolute favourites. I also love Diana Wynne Jones, but really just her Chrestomanci series. And most of what I read is kind of young adult or crossover fiction. I'm not really grown up in that way. But I suppose that's why I write for young adults, is because that's what I read. So you do tend to write what you read. So, long answer to a nice short question. Thank you. Okay, I'm going back to the music. Do you have a favourite folk band? Oh, no, that's so difficult. Okay, and switching places with the character in my book. Okay, right, I'm going to go to Rachel's first, and then I'm going to try and remember what the other one was, because I'm rubbish at doing the whole look up for the questions thing. It's so difficult. My favourite folk group, possibly, I absolutely adore the Corries, so Scottish folk group. but there's something about Luke Kelly from the Dubliners that just really speaks to me. And this actually, I put that in for Kelly as well. So she's actually called Michaela, but she calls herself Kelly because she loves Luke Kelly. So there's something about his voice, I just absolutely love it. He brings the songs to life so brilliantly. But as a group, probably the Corries, although they were just a pair, so they weren't really a group. I'm rubbish at answering these questions. Switching places with a character in any of my books. Well, I wouldn't switch places with anyone in the Backwater because actually they all have really sad lives, which sounds awful, but it's just kind of the backdrop to the story. I would happily switch places with Kelly. Kelly has a real adventure in this book, and that's not to say it's not without its heartbreak, because it definitely is, but you see her coming of age, and I think she comes of age in the kind of way that people would really want to, because it's all full of adventure, and she goes from being like alone to being surrounded by people, and then she makes this catastrophic decision that she wants to go back home, which is just a really bad call, and I wouldn't do that if I switched places with her. Yeah, so I'm gonna stick with Kelly. I would quite happily switch places with her. She has a lovely relationship with William, who's her little naval officer. Much better relationship than I had when anyway, let's not get on that. So she has this lovely relationship with him. She has a lovely relationship with Lord and Lady Arlen, although Lord Arlen's very caustic, but it's still quite a meaningful relationship she has with them. The relationship she has with Aelric and Lizzie is also really nice, but she loses that, so that's the first time she really gets that heartbreak in the story. So I'm going to go with Kelly. I would switch places with her because I would like to have that kind of adventure, I think. I think it would be quite fun. I would just... Okay, the planner... Oh, how much planning do I do when I write? Loads. Yeah, I'm a planner. Yeah. I have, for this book, a little yellow exercise book. So this book came about because my sisters and I did a challenge with each other. And what we had to do was we had to give a story idea that we'd had but hadn't actually worked ourselves to another sister. So it was me, Clem and Ginny. And this story idea was actually Clem's. And so she gave me it in a little yellow exercise book. And it basically said, the character goes into a world where folk songs come true. She finds out that the man she's with is the knight in the Twa Corbies song. So I don't know if you know that one, but you can always go and have a look. And how can she change his fate? So that was what I got from Clem. So my exercise book becomes full of all these different plans, like chapter by chapter plans. And I mean, I'm still very up for my characters surprising me, but I do like to have a general idea of the direction they're heading in. Otherwise, it would just be like chaos in my head and on my computer screen as well. So that's what I tend to go for. I use Scrivener. Scrivener helps a lot. So if anyone who's a writer is watching this, which I know they are because Rachel and Josie keep connecting, and I think Amy did at one point as well, and Clem, of course, but I know she uses what she uses anyway. Scrivener is good, and you can put everything up. Yay, fabulous, Rachel. And Josie, excellent. Well, I'm preaching to the converted. Scrivener's ace, basically. Oh no, Amy, just explore it. That's all I can say. So that's what I do, and I don't use it to its full potential at all. It's really it's just, you don't need to try harder, you just need to explore. I'm such a trial and error person. That's how I learn everything, is by trial and error. So that's what my adventures with Scrivener have been. Anyway, I should be wrapping this up. So I would just like to say, I'll just remind you of this front cover. The book trailer is out. It is fantastic. I didn't make it myself. Clemency made it for Crovus, and it is just amazing. So do make sure you check out the book trailer. And advanced reader copies are available for anyone who would like to do a review. Obviously, ebooks I can send straight away, or if you want a paperback ARC, then just let me know and we'll try and get one sent directly to you. So I would really love to have lots of reviews for this book, because I don't have that many reviews for The Backwater. It's such a pain. It's like people keep telling me, my friends keep telling me they've read it and enjoyed it, and I'm like, review it, and they just, you're authors, you'll understand. But a lot of people don't understand just how important reviews are. Right, this is my details. So Crowley, I am one of Crowley, so it's the publishing company that I run with my family. That's the top address. The next one is my address. Then we've got my Facebook. I just set up a Facebook author account like the other day, so it's very, very new, but feel free to come and find me anyway. And then on Twitter, obviously you found me on here, so you obviously know that this is me, JZ_K. Now, before I toddle off, because it's nearly time, I would very much like to introduce you to the person who's coming after me. So that is Amy Beashel. And Amy, I really hope I'm saying your name right. So Amy Beashel is at Beashel Writes, so it's just here. And she's going to be talking about The Sky Is Mine, which, oh, excellent, which is contemporary young adult fiction. So I'm really looking forward to hearing that. And of course, you always enjoy the ones that are after you more, and it's not because the ones that are before you aren't as good. It's just that because you're so nervous when it's coming up to yours. So now I can kick off my slippers and and relax and listen to Amy and the people who are after her doing theirs as well. So thank you again, Rachel, and I hope that you've enjoyed hearing about Dance With Me. Just one last time, this is what it looks like. Be sure to check it out in October, or if you'd like an ARC for reviewing, then just let me know. Okay, thank you very much. Take care, everyone. Bye.